Hey, and welcome back to your product North Star. Today we're here with Glenn Martin, who's got some really, really interesting information. You know, in our previous discussion, Glenn and I were talking and we were saying a lot of the time as product leaders, we kind of, in my words, we kind of rise to the level and then, you know, there's certain incompetencies that kind of come in. And what I personally mean by that is, as an ex-head of product and CPO, I might be really good at launching products. I might be really, really great at growing products. That doesn't mean I'm really great on the kind of the building out your team, scaling your team, whatever that means, which we're going to discuss today. So we've got Glenn on the podcast today. And Glenn, welcome.
Thank you, Ross. Appreciate the invitation. Excited to be here.
Oh, it's been a long time coming, so I'm super, super stoked to get this done. And hey, would you mind giving our audience a little bit of a kind of whistle-stop tour through your career
100%.
And who you help and what you
100%,
do?
yeah, of course. So I've been in recruitment for over 15 years now, so it is a career choice. I love what I do. I love the impact that recruitment and talent acquisition can have on a business, like the real positive impact. So I spent 10 years agency side, and then I decided that the framework and solutions of agencies wasn't innovative enough and close enough to customers for me to make the impact that I wanted. So I flipped out, went freelancing. So I've been freelancing for over 4 years now, 4.5 years actually. And I primarily work with startups and scale-ups within the fintech and insurtech space. I've done projects with social enterprises and non-for-profits, and currently I'm working with a fintech in the buy now, pay later consumer space, consumer credit space. And on the flip of that, I'm also working with an accelerator for climate change, not-for-profits. So always looking for interesting projects. And by that, I mean, I love building teams. I love helping founders, co-founders, C-suite individuals build high-performing, high-functioning teams. And that's really underpinned by a couple of things, which is, one, creating a really meaningful candidate experience for the individuals we're bringing into the business, and two, being very values-led. So yeah, that's, in a nutshell, that's me.
Oh, wow, that's amazing. And when you're talking about being values-led and building teams, I mean, you know, there's so many people that we speak to that are either product leaders or going from individual contributors to becoming leaders. And there's no shortage of roles for them per se. But there's a shortage of, I'd say, great roles or great teams to work with. So why don't you tell me a little bit more about that kind of your values-led philosophy around that?
Well, happy to, yeah. So, I mean, the values come from me, ultimately. I believe that if you are transparent, if you build trust, if you're collaborative, I think if you look for positive solutions and you think very meaningfully about the human-centered side of recruitment, you will deliver a great, and I say candidate simply because it's a term that is widely used and recognized. I personally prefer individual experience, because when you start to talk about candidates, you start to talk about people in a commoditized way. It's the nature, it's the push and pull of the industry, really. It's the nature of it. And I think those values I take to every client and team I engage with. And that's part of the first conversation I have with them. What are your values? How do your values underpin how you're going to approach the market and engage or attract, engage, and hire great individuals? So that's really where it comes from, definitely.
Well, that makes absolute sense. So you can at least see whether it's going to be a successful engagement, because if your values aren't aligned, clearly
100%.
It's not going to work out, right?
And to your point around the product market, right? So I did a quick search before you and I started our conversation today on a very widely used platform that most people have a profile on, and mentioning no names. And in the last month, just at product manager level, there was over 20,000 jobs live. And on the flip of that, in terms of active product managers that have highlighted that they are actively looking for new opportunities, there was roughly around 5,000-ish, 5.1. So if you think of if you think of being a product professional at the moment, there's roughly 4 jobs for every one individual actively looking. And that's not to say that, that doesn't go into the sort of passive market where people are not actively looking but could be interested. So it kind of gives you a sense of scale of the desirability and scale of the employability of product professionals at the moment, right? So that has a twofold kind of, I guess, outcome, in so much as one, if you're a VP, head of product, CPO, and you're hiring for product managers, senior product managers, POs, you're entering a very competitive marketplace where your employer brand or talent brand has to be really strong. The story around your product has to be really strong to resonate with an individual who has 3 other opportunities that potentially they're considering. And on the flip of that, and the second output is, as a PO, PM, SPM in the market looking, you are going to want to know a lot more about the opportunity than just a job description. That's not sufficient to engage your interest. And I've found that in the conversations I've had over the last 24 months where I've consistently hired for product professionals with the clients I'm working for. Product managers by nature are inquisitive. They're curious. They want to know about the product more than, we've got this product and it's a fintech product and it's kind of available in these markets. Not sufficient at all. They want to get into where they can. And sometimes I've had to actually ask them to sign a non-disclosure agreement because of the level of information they want, which I'm happy to do, if that gets their interest.
Sure.
They really want to know about the product roadmap. They want to know, can this product scale? Why are you choosing now to scale it? Why are you launching into these markets? What metrics and data underpin the potential success you foresee? How are you going to build out your team? And to that point around, what are the values within the product community within your business? How do they like to work? How do they like to operate? What approaches do they adopt? And all of these things. So it's that two-sided piece where it's a competitive market and the individuals in that market want to know a lot more. And you've got to be prepared as a company, client, potential employer to share that with them to get an opportunity to then bring them into a formal kind of interview process. This is not you doing it during the process. Sometimes you're having to do a lot of work at that initial engagement stage to just get their registered interest. So I think it's and these are the sort of things I love. Kind of getting into really meaningful conversations with individuals that are passionate about their career.
Wow, that's amazing, Glenn. It makes me think of, in our previous conversation, there's a product thought leader, let's call it that for now, called Teresa Torres. Amazing lady. She's written in product circles the #1 best-selling book called Continual Product Discovery. And Teresa, I apologize if I butchered the name of your book, but it's around that. And in our podcast interview, one of the things she was talking about is, what about hiring continual discovery? And her recommendation for candidates would be talking to, whether it's the product leader, whoever's going to be she or he will be the direct report of, and kind of saying, hey, I know you're talking about putting our careers first and supporting us in our career. Could I talk to someone on the team that you've done that for and see how that's played out for them? Yeah. And I was like, wow. Well, firstly, I mean, it makes sense for the person who wrote Continual Discovery to say, be discovering continually about the role as well, right? If you're a hammer, the world's a nail, then I say that with huge respect to Lisa. But does that kind of gel with where your head's at?
100%. Yeah, I think it's important. I think for a product professional, an individual that's really serious about their product career, each step that they take on that journey as they progress from PO to PM to SPM to hopefully, head of, that each step is a meaningful step, is a considered step, is one where they do their due diligence, their research, they're inquisitive, and they want to see, they don't want to just hear what could happen. They want that evidence that it has happened. So case in point to your example there, they want to be able to speak to a team member that's been on that journey. And if a company is being transparent, honest, and is living their values, they will have examples of that within that current team. If not that current team, depending, because let's be fair, sometimes, these are startups, right? There's like 5 or 6 people.
Sure.
But if they can evidence within that group of individuals a continuous journey, a growth journey, that will, I think, satisfy product professionals that it's the right choice for them. You know what I mean? And I think it's important. It is important.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember I was coaching someone in our career accelerator who came from a company that you might have been referring to, which kind of rhymes with LinkedIn. But she'd become a senior PM at PayPal and had gone through accelerator, did certain things, and within a week of leaving, I think she got like 3 job offers. Things like had a product at places like Headspace, big brands. And one of them was a startup. And her hiring manager come to her and said, look, cool, we'll make you product manager. And she wasn't happy with that because, she saw that as a bit of it's kind of a potentially a step down. If the startup didn't work, it looked like you were almost demoted to a PM. And if the startup didn't work out, then, what with recruiters and stuff. So, and I remember saying to her, like, hang on a second, they want you. They've gone through it. You've chosen them, but they've also chosen you. And if they are the right kind of company, they want to keep you happy. So my advice is go back and say to them, listen, this is actually an issue for you. Why am I just a PM? Or I'd like to be X. And at least give them the opportunity to either explain their thinking or to say, I didn't think about it at all, or didn't realize it meant much to you. But hey, listen, like we're a startup, we've got 50,000 things to think about. But one of the things we need to think about is keeping you happy and see how they respond. And she got on a call and her hiring manager said, look, let's actually discuss it. I want to understand it. And she said, look, if things don't work out, it looks like this. And why am I a product manager? And the explanation she was given is, well, there's only one product person and that's you. So you are the product manager. You're also the senior product manager and the head of. But we don't have a real product department. So you're that. And they were like, well, look, if you want to say you're the product lead, because you kind of are, you're also the product follower, but regardless. And they're like, look, if that's what it's going to take to like make you happy, hey, if it's a title we can give you, that's great. And I'm not suggesting titles are the be all and end all from this conversation. What I'm trying to say is like, as a product leader putting the team together, or even as someone who's moving into that role, like what you're saying, like, hey, do our values align? Because that conversation, I think fundamentally was a value thing. Like, do you value me? Do you value what I'm looking for as well in my career, or to appear to be valued? Does that gel with where you are?
It's interesting just to kind of unpack that slightly. So companies have, and if they're not aware of it, they should be, a responsibility to explain why they are making an offer, what their thinking and rationale is behind the offer. And that goes beyond the remuneration, right? It's kind of really explaining that. So that debrief. So when you get all the interviewers together, you've debriefed on that individual, you've decided to go forward for an offer. You need to convey that information to that individual to give them context as to why they've received the offer. And actually, to that point, probably address some of the questions they might have, i.e. like job title. So I think it's certainly incumbent on companies to be better. And this is across every form of recruitment. It's not just specific to product. Get better at giving feedback. More transparency builds trust. If that person doesn't get offered the job, you're building advocacy for your business and your product. Secondly, I think that the unfortunate thing is we still get trapped in traditional thinking where job titles, hierarchy are important because it feeds into the way that kind of unfortunately recruitment works, because people look at job titles, it fits into hierarchy structures. And if you think about how kind of iterative and progressive and a kind of solution-driven product is, and then you see it getting trapped in that kind of traditional framework of job titles, it's almost like it's an interesting catch-22. But I think coming back to the point of going back out to market with a certain job title that looked like a step back or step down from the one you were on previously, really smart, curious companies and recruiters will always read past the job title. If somebody, or if a recruiter or hiring manager rejects you on a job title alone, they're probably not worth working for anyway, because they haven't actually taken the time to really look at what you can bring to that business. So yeah, and unfortunately that's not an uncommon scenario where, kind of that discussion around job titles becomes a bit of a, it's something that would come up. And I always say, if you lose somebody on the basis of not being able to accommodate the job title that they would want, that's a really poor reason to lose a quality individual from your, potentially joining your business.
So, I mean, that seems like really, really great advice for, I'm just going to call them product leaders. I think all C-suite leaders, and CX and whatever we want to say, and even if it's not on the senior leadership team, it's just on that. What other advice would you give, let's say, product leaders who are looking at scaling up their team? I remember once I had a role at one of the largest private company in the UK, and they really struggled to hire any product people. They were like, well, but it almost became this kind of self-fulfilling, well, why would someone want to come and work with us? They could work with Google. And I was like, well,
yeah, exactly.
Why didn't you ask me why?
Slightly self-defeatist. Okay, so advice. First and foremost, my key advice to any hiring manager in a super competitive market, whether it's product, whether it's dev, whether it's design, always interviewing, sometimes hiring. Don't hire, stop having conversations, and then, we need to hire, go back out to market. Always, see it as a form of networking. You're continually having introductory conversations with product professionals around fit for your business and what they're looking for. You could theoretically fit 1 to 2 of those in a week, maybe more if you're actively hiring, where you're just connecting, having conversations, building your network, so that ultimately when it does come time to ramp up and hire, you could potentially have, a group of product professionals that you could immediately reach out to. Timing's right. From the previous conversation, actually, they seem like aligned to where we are and what we're looking for. Secondly, your partners. The default sometimes for hiring teams in a really competitive market is, let's go out to agency. If the agencies can, kind of send us volume, let's get 2 or 3 agencies, looking in the market for us. That can be happening in the background. They can present profiles. Personally, for me, if you're going to go that route, you need to choose the right partners. They need to be advocates and sending the right message for your business and your product. So you need to put the time in to make sure they're properly briefed. And secondly, don't set an unrealistic expectation. Yeah, send me 3 CVs by the end of the week, because your chances are you'll get 3 very average CVs, or you'll get 3 CVs and then suddenly when you come to interview them, suddenly 2 are not available. So it's kind of choosing the right partners as well. And I think third, and this is a really important one, be prepared to really lean in and be present in the recruitment process. As a VP, leader, or head of, don't just expect to be that kind of final stage interview. Chances are, and I always have hiring managers as the first interview, be present, lean in, be prepared to give 15 to 20 minutes to an individual or potential candidate to essentially get them interested. So your recruiter or in-house recruiter may have engaged Ross and had a provisional chat. Ross, you're interested, but to be fair, you've got some specific questions that the recruiter can't ask. Get the head of VP or lead to have a 20-minute conversation with you just to align that. So there is more effort required and more time allocated to the process from the leader to make it meaningful, to increase the chances of the success. So those are the 3. Always interviewing, sometimes hiring, build your network, choose the right partners, and be prepared to lean in and be present in the recruitment process.
That's really interesting. I'm just thinking in one of my experiences where I was hired as a contractor to basically put together a product unit for a company based in Ireland. And it was really easy for me to kind of speak to certain people that I actually wanted. And I knew they were on the market. I reached out to them and like, hey, I need a head of for this. I need a head of that. And really, really quickly, I was able to fill those roles. But it was essentially me putting together teams of people. I mean, we could say networks, but they're people I really liked because I'd spoken to them before. I knew we could collaborate. I'm still in touch with them now. And even though I knew myself as, the person who put the team together, I'd be moving on quickly. It was a contract role, but, I knew that the company was in good hands because I knew those people. But because I kind of live on, I live on LinkedIn, but whether it's the podcast, whether it's keynotes that are given, I have a little network. And I don't think that makes me special. I just think that it means that when I get asked to do a certain thing, I have certain people that reach out. Look, the majority of the people that are good will always say no because they will have good roles already. But they may know you, and at least they'll kind of have those initial conversations, and they may know someone who's looking for someone or something. Or I have quite a few recruiters who reach out to me and go, "Hey, who do you know in your network who's as one at the end of last year, a few weeks ago, so who do you know that's mad about football? I've got this great football thing." And I was like, look, I don't know anything about football. I'm South African. But if it was about rugby, maybe we could chat. But I literally don't know anything. So it was just reaching out to my network, and the number of people that came back and they were like, hey, I'd love to talk about it. And then I was very happy to kind of send those over to the recruiter and go, also because I trust their recruiter, I know they're in good hands. Yeah. It wasn't just like, hey, listen, I could, those, if anybody is looking, we can give you a £200 thing. I'm like,
exactly. But
that's okay.
But that comes,
I mean, everyone loves £200 or £500, but yeah.
Well, I was going to say that comes back to two things, partnerships and your network. And one of the things I always ask, kind of senior leaders, regardless of which particular function they're recruiting for, is who do you know? Who in your network could you bring to this business today, tomorrow? Who ideally could you bring in? Because perhaps the danger at the more senior you get, the less time or perceived time you have to put into your network. And I would always advise senior leaders to be at a point where they can go into their network and hire 1 to 2 people pretty quickly, or at least have conversations with individuals that they think could be interested. If you're a senior leader and you don't know anybody within your particular area of expertise that you could hire, you need to work on your network immediately. Because the really great leaders that I've worked with, very much similar to what you just described there, Ross, they're like, okay, I've got 4 requirements open. 1, 2 is filled. I know Ross, I know Glenn, they're going to be coming on board. We'll put them through the formal process, but I think they're going to get hired. Then I've got potentially a couple of people for the 3rd one. The 4th one is the one that we'll probably struggle with, so we need to get out to market with that. If as a senior leader you're there and you're like, I don't know anybody, then you do need to return to working on your network, because not only is it a source of great individuals that could potentially be part of your team, it's a constant source of knowledge. It's keeping you close to your market, your profession, your specialism, and I think that's always super important.
100%. It surprises me. And by the way, let me ask you, how does it land usually with the engagements that you have, or just other, let's call it product leaders that you might work with that engage you because essentially you're asking them to do the work that maybe they might have thought, well, hang on a second, that's not us, that's the recruiter. So it's a great mindset shift, which you would imagine as a good product leader, you'd be able to do that. But how does it usually land for you?
It's a partnership first and foremost. I always say that individuals that understand that recruitment and the business are a partnership will get more value than those that see recruitment as a service. And in actual fact, if they have a couple of people that they're referring to the business, that's all they're doing. They're making an introduction. Recruitment, manages every other part of that. So ultimately, they're referring people to the business, but they're not actually doing the work to make sure it's a fair, equitable and open kind of recruitment and hiring process. And I think the really great leaders have always been very receptive to somebody that knows the value of network and networking and communities. So I've yet to have a conversation with certainly a product professional where they've gone, to your point, Ross, well, you're the recruiter, you tell me. Really great leaders don't think like that. They think about partnerships, they think about solutions, they think about hiring the best talent. Admittedly, on the flip, I have had outside of kind of product, no, I can recall 2 to 3 conversations where the hiring managers have responded like that. And we've actually gone through and I've explained to him the rationale behind the question, or them. I've explained the rationale to them behind the question, and they get it. It's a process of education. And those were individuals that I would say looked at recruitment more as a service than a partnership. So there is that kind of learning curve that sometimes as maybe a more kind of junior or new to hiring, that an individual might go through. Certainly as the market gets so competitive, and actually really being very, like I said, very creative partnerships and very proactive around your approach to kind of recruitment, you get better results.
Yeah, I don't want to kind of put you on the spot or anything, but
go for it.
What would you say, like going back to the example that I gave you of, let's say the CPO that kind of has low self-esteem about their, let's move that value judgment away. But let's say they're thinking, look, I'm not Google, I'm not Facebook. I can't offer free lunches, or I can offer free lunches, but I'm still not Google or Facebook. But I still need a first-class kind of product team. What would you tell them? How would they attract us?
So, really good question. There are hundreds and thousands, nay, millions of businesses that are not Google and Facebook, first and foremost. So if you're looking at those businesses as a North Star, perhaps that's not proportionately fair to your business and or product to try and compete with those types of companies. I mean, you'll always get individuals that are attracted by the brand proposition that will go there and work for that type of company. I think for me, my first question to that individual is, irrespective of Google and Facebook, are you confident in the product that you have or products that you have? Do you feel that adds value, impact to the customers, whether it's B2B or B2C, that you serve? If the answer to that is yes, we have a good starting point to build a narrative and a story around why your business is attractive and should be attractive to potential talent. And that feeds into the talent brand and the employer brand. And I think with regards to your kind of benchmarking in the market, you have to be realistic. You have to be realistic in so much as, there will be a percentage of the market that will naturally gravitate to Google and Facebook, but you're not competing with Google or Facebook. You're competing. So say, for instance, 20% of the market ends up drifting towards Facebook and Google. You have 80% of the market of talent to attract, engage, and hire.
It reminds you of one of the CEOs of Netflix said, look, we're not competing against, say, the BBC, just uses. We're competing against sleep.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's kind of knowing who it is you're competing against.
Exactly.
From my, I remember earlier in my career, when I was obviously a lot younger, I thought that, hey, having one of those big brands made sense. And then I got there and realized, okay, I'm one out of 132,000 people. I'm not having the impact that I would have hoped that I was going to have. And while it's great to have the brand on the CV, and my mom thinks it's awesome, however, from an actual being able to make an impact perspective, if that's something, and I think almost all really good product managers that I know, having an impact is a big deal for them.
Definitely.
Sometimes you're going to have that in other companies.
Are you doing meaningful work? Are you doing meaningful work, certainly from a product perspective, that, again, you feel is having an impact and delivering value to a particular consumer segment? And I think that for me is a great selling point, because ultimately, if you believe in it, you will talk passionately about it. That will be communicated to the individual you're trying to hire. And that in itself, I think, is a great way to attract and kind of ultimately as well retain talent, product talent. And you're right. I mean, it's always nice to, I guess it's similar to kind of the education kind of piece, right? If you've got a named or widely recognized kind of university on your CV, always stands out a little bit more than, I went to kind of London South Bank University. Now it's a reputable university, but it's certainly not one of the red bricks, right? So, but that hasn't inhibited me doing really meaningful work within the field of kind of recruitment. And, again, I think you have to kind of calibrate it correctly. And to your point, do your market mapping and actually understand who you're competing against within your market. Aspirationally, if you want to go toe to toe with Facebook, I think that the key thing you'll be competing on there is remuneration, because they pay way above market average. But do you really want to hire somebody that's really just focused on the remuneration? I wouldn't. I don't know many that would.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, we've seen a lot of people that we've coached who've ended up, but a lot of them just like have been in certain roles and they don't realize where the product market is as far as remuneration. So they might have been, hey, I would have been happy with 75, where they're like, well, hang on a second, with your skills, you should be going in at 95.
Yeah.
You just don't know the market.
Exactly.
And that's cool. That's not a criticism. I mean, that's not your job. Your job is being great at product.
But again,
and then people ended up getting that. Yeah.
I was going to say, again, if your network is active and you're talking to people, you'll have a sense of the market, right? It's another way of kind of getting a sense of your value in the market. And there are kind of websites like Glassdoor, and you can drop on to LinkedIn and do kind of, salary, or look at salary information. I mean, admittedly, the way that information is collated, it's like not misleading, but it's a kind of an aggregate of job adverts. And if the job adverts have a salary on it, then it's aggregated in. And obviously, recruitment companies release salary surveys every year. So, if you're just, curious about, the salary brackets, drop on to, you've got Reed, Indeed, and kind of Michael Pages and all these other kind of recruitment agencies that release, kind of salary surveys. There's always a way to kind of get a sense of what salary you should be targeting. But equally, and this is going to sound a little bit less objective and more subjective, is how you feel when you're made that offer, how that remuneration feels to you. Does it make you feel valued? Does it make you feel excited? Does it sit with you in terms of your sense of self? Does it make you sit up? Does it make you, does it feel right? So, and that's probably more a slightly unconscious thing that people go through and they kind of rationalize. But I think from a value perspective, the role needs to be meaningful, and you need to feel that your skills, experience, and knowledge and personality and what you're bringing to the business is remunerated correctly in your mind.
Look, I always think that in product this goes for development and other things as well, but we are so well remunerated. We almost sometimes a little bit spoiled for choice. And I think, if you are a product person and you do have X number of years behind you, or you've dealt with some successful launches and stuff, you're almost like I always say, I can't believe I feel like the popular kid at school for the first time in my life. It's like, hey, all these people want to talk to me. But again, it's like, just because they want to talk to me doesn't mean that they're right for me,
Yeah.
The other thing that I learned recently is, and I made this mistake, is don't report, if you're a product lead, don't report into delivery. And I remember I took a role where it was just a contract role, so it wasn't like a kind of getting married to it, so to speak. It was just a kind of a stopgap thing. And I remember the hiring manager in their LinkedIn, they'd mentioned look, technology is the easy part. The hard part is, dealing with people. They're the hard part. And I was like, that should have been a big kind of red flag. And I'm not saying people are easy. And I kind of, there's a part of me that agrees. But when it came down to it, it was just like delivery. Doesn't matter, human, doesn't matter this. And then eventually got to a point where look, I need to bring some of my personality or my humanity into this role, and it clearly isn't welcome. Yeah. So look, let's part ways. There'll be no shortage of contractors that'll pick up a a role that's very well remunerated. Like I say, we're pretty spoiled. So, and yeah, within 2-3 weeks, loads of other roles. But I love the fact that kind of sitting there with that unconscious feeling like, does it feel right? And when I think of the roles, I remember there was one utility company that they work on what they would hate me saying, but who cares? Like on a kind of a pyramid scheme type of thing, like you sell people downstream and all that stuff, which I'd never been exposed to. And I joined them as a product senior PM a few years ago, and they were like, okay, great. Now, for you to really understand the product, you need to try and sell it. So you need to try and sell it to your family. And I was like, okay, I might be good at product. We can debate that. But what I'm really not good at is being a salesperson, yeah. And that's not the role that I took. So if only I knew that before, and I could get that gut check and go, okay, I'm out.
Yeah,
of it. Like,
yeah. It's interesting just feeding into that, just around kind of that due diligence of a particular business you may be joining. One question I get asked, and actually I ask product professionals when I'm kind of pre-screening and interviewing them, is what's your product philosophy? How do you approach product? And equally to your point around kind of literature, I mean, I remember the flip from kind of business analysis to product, when it became a really recognized kind of function in its own, and there were loads of business analysts trying to flip into product and calling themselves product owners and product managers, when in actual fact they really weren't. So one thing that I used as a kind of almost like screening question was, I was like, have you read Marty Kagan's book? And if I got a completely kind of blank expression, I'm like, okay.
Who?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Why would you ask me that question? And I think it's kind of one of those things where that feeds it. You know, if people are reading around product, you know, they're invested in the community of product. They're contributing, like yourself, Ross, to, you know, furthering and sharing information and views and perspectives around product. That person is the type of person you want to hire in your business. You know what I mean? That passion for what they do is absolutely the type of person that would just be so meaningful and impactful in any business, you know?
And I think you can kind of like see if it passes kind of the smell test, right? Like or just intuitive test. Like, does it feel right or wrong? And you know, when you're talking, it reminds me of a few years ago, I was coaching a BA, and she was one of my direct reports, and my line manager told me, like, hey, we should start looking at kind of promoting her, if you will, into being a product manager. And so we started trying to do that, and she was one of the best business analysts I've ever worked with. Just like, if you want to understand how payment systems work, she's just like on another level. She's just absolutely magic, and I've got nothing but amazing things to say about her. And then we were busy doing it, and after a couple of weeks she came, she was like, I really don't want to do your job. You don't do anything. You just sit around talking all day. And she had the most amazing ability, just like kind of, you know, call things the way she saw them. She was like, you guys don't actually do any work. Like, if I had to do this job, I'd have to go home in the evenings to actually just get the work done. And I was trying to explain to her, I'm not going to mention her name, but and we're still friends and we collaborate and stuff. And I was like, look, here's the thing. That is the work. The work is what they call stakeholder management, but it's really talking to people, communicating, what do you think, getting feedback, improving, iterating all the time. And it's also, I always say, it's like politics. And politics to me is the art of saying no without making the person on the other side feel like you just shot their dog or took their chocolates or something, right? And it's like, and to her, it was just like, that makes no sense to me. Why would I do that? Like, surely I just give them the black or white answer. Like, I was like, exactly. And that's why you are the world's best business analyst. And you really, and she was like, oh, I'm not doing this. So I love what you just said. That it just reminded me of that. And I'm not saying that with anything other than love and affection for this person, because she is phenomenal. Cool. But you're right. And that's absolutely it. So, Glenn, I know we're coming up on time, and I want to be respectful of your time. So, I love your approach. I love the genuineness, the integrity, and the real passion that you have for helping people build teams. And if people want to learn more about you or reach out to you, and where can they go to find some more?
Well, listen, thank you, and thank you for the conversation, Ross. I really appreciate it. It's been really great to speak to you. With regards to contacting me, I mean, look, LinkedIn would be probably the most obvious choice. LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. I mean, I'm pretty present on all of them. And I think, ultimately as well, when we kind of post this out, we'll put some links on there just to kind of connect with anybody that's interested. But yeah, this has been super enjoyable, Russ. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Oh, it's been great, Glenn. Really, I've really enjoyed it. I hope to get you back. And for everybody listening, we'll put the links that Glenn was talking about in the show notes when you get there, when we put the links out. And I know you recently went through some work on your knee, and I really hope your healing really is amazing and you heal up really, really quickly. And,
thanks, man.
And have an amazing 2022.
Likewise.
Glenn. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Ross.
So I really hope you enjoyed my conversation with Glenn Martin. Glenn is absolutely brilliant. I think if you are in product leadership and you're looking at scaling out a team or building out a team, reach out to him. He's really great. I've recommended him to other people that I've got some great relationships with, and they speak incredibly highly of him, and I just think he's brilliant. Any other questions, please feel free to reach out. It's ross@theproduct.coach. I'd love to hear your questions and look forward to seeing or hearing from you next time. Bye for now.